Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back and joining me for our next part. We are chapter 27 of Matthew, verse 45. Now, from the 6th hour, darkness fell upon all the land until the 9th hour. So, three hours of darkness in the middle of the day where there shouldn't have been darkness. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which I'm probably butchering, but my God, why have you forsaken me? And some of those who were standing there when they heard it began saying, This man is calling for Elijah. Eli, Eli, lama, yeah. Immediately one of them ran, and taking a sponge, he filled it with sour wine and put it on a reed and gave him a drink. And I almost feel like this is an act of kindness or mercy, I think, a little bit on part of the onlooker, where they're trying to give Jesus something to drink to give him some form of relief in the midst of his pain. But it's kind of weird that it's sour wine. We don't really think of sour wine being something nice to give somebody. So I'm not sure if it's the exact same wine that had the gall in it from before, or if it's some other type of thing. But the rest of them said, Let us see whether Elijah will come to save him. Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Which Jesus, this one who has been quiet this whole time in the midst of their accusations towards him, he's just like being quiet unless they ask him something like, Are you the Messiah? Are you the Son of God? And Jesus says usually like, It is as you say, or you have said so, or something like that in his answer. After all of that, now at the moment of Jesus' spirit leaving and separating from his physical body, he lets out this loud, huge cry and yields up his spirit with it. And every one of us is going to go through that same process. There's aspects of it that really suck for sure, but you and me are both going to go through the process of our spirit being separated from our mortal body at the end of this mortal life. And I hope and pray that that fact instills humility in every one of us. Because we're not the top dogs. We're servants. We're slaves to God. Or at least that's where we should be. And behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. So like this veil, from what I've heard and listened to with people that have looked more into this than I have, this veil, when I hear the word veil, I think of like a woman's veil when she's a wife and she's getting married, and that's that really thin little lace veil type thing. Apparently that's nothing like what this veil was. This veil is like a thick blanket type of a thing, where it's hanging down, but it's so thick. In this veil of the temple, whenever Jesus' spirit is separated from his body, when Jesus yields up his spirit, this huge thick blanket that separates the holiest of the holies, the place where, if I'm not mistaken, the chief priest goes in once a year to provide sacrifices for the children of Israel, and only that chief priest is allowed inside that space, and if I'm not mistaken, whoever else goes in there dies. That holiest of holies, that's separated by this massive thick, like I think it's felt, I don't really know, but this huge blanket-like thing that they're calling a veil, it spontaneously rips from top to bottom. Not even from bottom to top. It starts at the top. It starts at the top and rips down to the bottom. And with it, the earth shook and the rocks were split. I assume this is after, because it's the second thing listed in this sentence, even though it's part of the same sentence. And the earth shook and the rocks were split as well. So this veil that separates something so important as the holiest of holies from the rest of everything spontaneously rips in two when Jesus actually yields up his spirit. And there's, I think in other gospels describe it as an earthquake. An earthquake, earth shakes, and the rocks themselves are split. And get this, the tombs were opened, presumably by that earthquake. The tombs are split open or opened, And many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep, are dead inside those tombs, were raised. And that makes me think of probably a lot of things, but one of the things it makes me think of is the people who were in verse 42 saying, what did they say? He has saved others, but he cannot save himself. They're accusing him of being incapable of saving himself, even though he could save others. And then they went forward and said, let him come down now off of the cross, and we will believe him. They're making that truth claim that they would believe him if he did come down from the cross. Pardon me, my voice is not great. I'm getting sick, so pardon me. So I think about that. What are those people thinking now in light of as soon as Jesus dies and his spirit is gone from this world or from his body in this world? Now the holiest of holies veil is ripped in half, ripped in two. Rocks are split in two. There's an earthquake. The sun has been darkened for 3 hours in the middle of the day. What else happened? The tombs are literally busted open, split open. And the bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. There is a plethora of resurrections. Doesn't say how many, but it says it gives plural, multiple times plural. So multiple people's bodies were raised from the dead and resurrected at the death of Christ. So it's like, in a way, it's confirming what they're saying. Like, yeah, he helps others. Yeah, in his death, the reaction of his death is that several were raised from the dead. But also, it's not that he cannot save himself. It's that he's willfully choosing to submit himself to the will of his Father, which means that he has to stay on the cross. Not just that, but the death of Christ marks the immediate point, I would say, in like from what I've heard from other people preaching on this topic, which I tend to agree with, this ripping of the veil in two, this opening of the holies of holies, it's symbolic of the allowance that we have now been given under the blood of Christ to approach God's throne of grace openly. The free gift has been given. The propitiation for the sins of the world that was foreordained has come to fruition, and we now have access to God, even to the Holy of Holies. Coming out of the tombs, the people who were resurrected, the saints who were resurrected, are coming out of the tombs after Jesus, Oh, this must be talking about after the fact, because I'll read you what it says specifically. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised, and coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. So they must have kind of just been like trying to regain some resemblance of equilibrium and coming back from the dead. And then when Christ is raised, then they go back to the holy city and appear to many. That actually explains what I'm about to talk about here in a second. But that looks like they don't come into the city until after Christ's resurrection. But that's interesting because obviously somebody knew that this was happening beforehand. Word just must not have traveled fast enough. Now the centurion and those who were with him keep guarding over Jesus. The centurion and those who were with him keeping guard over Jesus, when they saw the earthquake and the things that were happening, became very frightened and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine being the soldier that stabbed Jesus in the side and blood and water comes out? Can you imagine being any of these like chief priests and high priest people and Pharisees and Sadducees and even just the crowd that's chanting for his crucifixion and for the release of the actual criminal Barabbas, I think it was, not Barnabas. Can you imagine being any of these people in light of all the miracles that are happening? The sun being darkened and the veil being rent in twain, people being resurrected from the dead and reappearing to people. Can you imagine being any of them? Many women were there looking on from a distance who had followed Jesus from Galilee while ministering to him. Among them was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus, and then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb. That's a privilege, right? You take the body of Christ and put it in your own brand new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock. The dude was chopping into that rock by hand to create it. And he rolled a large stone against the entrance of the tomb and went away. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the grave. On the next day, the day after the preparation, this is interesting, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered together with Pilate. And in light of all those miracles that were happening, they say, "Sir, we remember that when he, Jesus, was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I am to rise again.' Therefore, give orders for the grave to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal him away and say to the people, 'He is risen from the dead,' and the last deception will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard. Go, make it as secure as you know how." And they went and made the grave secure, and along with the guard, they set a seal on the stone. So why is that interesting? I don't know if it's the exact same people, but let's look actually really quick and see if it says. Let's see. Yeah, the chief priests. The chief priests, scribes, and elders said, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. We will believe in him." And here all these miracles are happening, and there is resurrection from the dead. I guess I don't know for sure if they knew about it at this point, but at least some people knew about the fact that people were getting raised from the dead. But they didn't appear into the city until Jesus was resurrected, it seems. So, who knows? But despite that, they're calling Jesus a deceiver and saying, in the previous verses, look, if Jesus saves himself from this cross, we're going to believe him. Well, he didn't do that. He willfully chose to stay on the cross, but there's all these miracles spontaneously happening around it. Sun's dark for, 3 hours in the middle of the day when it wouldn't normally be. You have the veil, that thick blanket veil ripped in half, ripped in 2 pieces spontaneously for no reason. Well, not for no reason, for a good reason, but spontaneously without any, naturally observable catalyst. How about that? And then also you have this earthquake that's like splitting rocks in half and splitting tombs open, and people are getting resurrected from tombs. All of these miracles, the Pharisees presumably are just willfully denying. I don't know exactly what they are. Maybe they're willfully ignorant. Maybe they're just willfully denying. There is a concept inside people who are narcissists where basically, you tell a lie loud enough and for long enough, and people will believe it. Narcissists have this weird ability to end up doing that to their own self. They end up celebrating qualities about themselves that they don't actually possess, and in so doing, they end up believing their own lie that they're telling themselves. So they believe that they're amazing at skateboarding, but they couldn't do a kickflip to save their life or something. So, some kind of example like that. I wonder if it's something like that the Pharisees and chief priests are going through. Narcissism can easily happen to people who are in positions with a lot of praise from other people, I would think. I actually don't know that for sure, but I would think it could happen. Like, it seems like people in higher power positions end up having struggles with narcissism. I don't know why they were thinking that, but it's just ironic to me that they're claiming that they would believe if Jesus would come down from the cross, but yet they're not going to believe that this veil is ripped in half for no reasonable, observable thing. You know, the sun's darkened, and all these miracles that I've already listed. It's like it's not connecting. It's like there's a veil over their eyes, type of a deal. Yeah. And I wonder too if they're thinking like they want to go place this guard over Jesus' tomb. Are they going to try and justify and say, "Oh, these people that were resurrected from the tomb when Jesus died, these people, you know, during this time of that earthquake, these people are not actually dead people that were risen. There are people that are alive impersonating the dead people who were risen, and the dead people who were risen actually had their bones stolen, taken somewhere else, buried, whatever. They could try and make something up like that so that they wouldn't have to believe in what was being said, unfortunately. And they're trying to make that be unable to be argued in Jesus' case, which is a good thing, I guess. They're even sealing it. They're setting a seal on the stone. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if that's like putting plaster on any crack around it so that if there's any disturbance you can see it, excuse me. But I appreciate you very much watching. We are going to be on the very last chapter. For those of you who have made it this far, I appreciate it very much. I'll see you tomorrow.